Strange Brew Podcast, Season 1, Episode 376, Sports. Let's go.
On the ground, a chance here. Durham to Hardy to first. In time! Yes! The Brewers win! Yes!
Here comes Melvin to the 25, to the 20, Gordon 15, 10, 5, touchdown! Wisconsin! Record-breaking run!
Morgan, a smash up the middle, base hit to center. Here comes Gomez, around third, a throw, and the Brewers win!
Here's the snap. He looks, he throws, it's complete interception. And there is your Super Bowl dagger.
Booker the drive, gets inside, leans in, knocked away and stolen by Holiday. Phoenix has to foul, on a pinnacle ball, throws it down.
Swinging fly ball in the right center. Broxton is there, and they're the champions. They have done it.
It's been a 50-year journey. Wisconsin, we've got a room at the top of the world tonight. The Milwaukee Bucks are NBA champions.
And they said I couldn't tighten up the intro anymore. I think that's about as concise as we can be. Welcome in episode 376 on your Friday morning. We've got some stuff to go over, and then we are going to do, as promised, I think I've got, how many mailbag episode questions do I have? 1, 2, 3. Got 4 mailbag episode questions that we're going to get to here today. And then, of course, we are going to talk about the Brewers in Vegas. What a circus. That was exactly what it should be, though. That's exactly what a baseball series should look like in Las Vegas. It was chaotic. You didn't know what was going to happen next. And Monday's game in particular was dynamite. 15-14 final in 12 innings. And then things calmed down a little bit Tuesday, Wednesday. Unfortunately for the Brewers, they win that slugfest on Monday, then drop Tuesday, Wednesday. It ends up being a pretty good road trip, though. 4-2 could have been better because you were 4-0. But a 4-2 road trip as they are now back home with the Phillies tonight. Got to talk some Packer minicamp. Tucker Kraft yesterday or Wednesday was absolutely firing from the hip. We're going to play some audio from that we had on Sportscast all on, was it Thursday morning then? I've got 3 different Tucker Kraft cuts I want to play you. Are we concerned about Trey Smack already? He did not have a good week. Trey Smack did not have a good week. I am not going to be panicked about June kicking. I am not. This is, again, me talking into the mirror, pointing at myself. I will not be panicked about June kicking. Because remember last offseason, McManus, he was fantastic in training camp, in mini camp, in OTAs, in preseason, and then it fell apart once we got to the regular season. And he had injuries, so that's a part of it too. But yeah, Trey Smack, the 6th-round pick, was not great. Lucas Havrisik was actually really good. We'll go over that, and then we'll get into the mailbag episode questions on the back half of the podcast. But yeah, before we talk about local stuff, really I think the story of the week is NBA Finals Game 4. That was one of the best NBA Finals games, one of the best NBA playoff games I think I've ever watched. Game 4, Knicks and Spurs at MSG. I'll play a little clip here from Game 3, I think this is. So the Spurs win Game 3. Have we talked about things since the Spurs won Game 3? When was that? Game 4 was Wednesday? Was it Monday? Oh, dear God. Now I'm clicking on the wrong things. Yeah, it was Monday. So we haven't talked. So we had an episode, and then Game 3 was that night. I have to admit, I hate the Knicks. There's nothing I really like about the Knicks. They are a big part of when I think back to my childhood, watching all the triple headers on the NBA on NBC, and Marv something? Who's that weird guy that bit that lady? But when Marv Albert was calling those games with Snapper Jones, I mean, we talked about this when the NBA came back to NBC this year. There was a lot of nostalgia there, and a lot of that was Patrick Ewing and the Knicks and Reggie Miller and the Pacers and Michael Jordan, you may have heard of him, and the Bulls and all those rivalries of the 90s. A lot of those games I remember watching in the playoffs and on tripleheader Sundays were at Madison Square Garden. So while I don't like the Knicks and I don't feel good about their fans feeling good, and I don't want to live in a world, which it looks like we're going to live in, even though I have money on them to win, It does look like we're going to live in a world where the already pompous New York fans will be have even more pomposity, because they're probably going to be the NBA champions. We'll see. There's still a little ways to go here, but a 3-1 series lead after that historic comeback on Wednesday. But here was the beginning of Game 3 as they're coming out to ante up and the crowd's just going nuts. This was the ESPN broadcast with EJ and Chuck and Kenny Smith and everybody. Wow. It is electric. The crowd's going absolutely ballistic.
I'm telling you something, boys and girls. Man. Sports, there is nothing like it.
Sports.
I'm not going to lie. I got goosebumps.
This is special. Wow. See, the other part is, guys, I've been fortunate to play against the Knicks in the final. The one thing when you're a Spur and you come in here or you're a Rocket, your favorite people are rooting against you.
Look at Giannis.
That is a different feeling. You know, you grew up listening to Jay-Z. You watched Larry David. You watched Fat Joe. You watched all of these rap, and they're all cheering against you. That is a different feeling, too.
That's a fact. You're feeling that for sure, but I'll tell you what.
It's just a buzz in the arena. So, again, even though we are not Knicks fans, there's just something about that moment, an NBA Finals moment. I love that they went back to putting the Larry O'Brien trophy as a part of the floor. I don't know who bullied them into doing that. I think Pardon My Take actually bullied the NBA into doing that again. Because, again, when I was a kid, and for many, many years, that was always a part of the way the finals looked, where you would find a way to put the Larry O'Brien trophy graphic as a part of the midcourt logo in every arena. And it looked awesome, and it made it feel special. It made it feel bigger. For whatever reason they went away from that, I'm so bummed that was not a part of our experience when the Bucks went all the way in 2021. There were Larry O'Brien trophies all over the arena. My wife and I went to Game 4. I'm still paying for it. Still paying that debt down. But there were graphics of the Larry O'Brien trophy everywhere, but it would have been awesome for it to be in the middle of the court with that Bucks logo. So it just looks cooler at MSG with the Knicks logo and that MSG look and the Larry O'Brien trophy there. So they lose on Monday, and they're up 2-1 going into Wednesday. Wednesday turns into, in the second half, one of the greatest playoff games I've ever seen. And the Knicks were just getting worked in the first half. The Spurs couldn't miss a shot. They were up by 27 at half, and they led by as many as 29 in the third quarter. But in the NBA, it doesn't take but a 10-0 run, a 12-0 run. I remember even thinking, now look, like I said, I've got the Knicks plus 165 to win the series. I was not feeling great because if you lose on Wednesday, then you won the 2 road games, and then you drop the 2 home games, and then you give home court back to the Spurs, and your back is kind of against the wall. Even though it's 2-2 and a best of 3, you're not feeling great then when the Spurs have 2 of the potential next 3 games at home. But we're watching that second half, and it's just they're getting smacked around. I got Trey Smack on the brain. They're getting smacked around all game. But then it's the NBA. You knock down a 3, you get a stop. You knock down a 3, you get a stop. That whole Madison Square Garden crowd is starting to gain some energy, and they're standing up. It's defense. And the momentum just works against you. And remember, one of the reasons I took the Knicks is, like we talked about, I kind of felt like the Spurs having to do what they had to do just to get there. It just felt like they were going to be exhausted by the time they got to the final boss. And having to unseat the Thunder and win Game 7 there and all of the emotional energy you expend there. That was a lot of the thinking I had behind taking the Knicks when they were the underdogs to begin the series at plus 165. But also, the Spurs are so young. The Knicks are not a real super veteran team, but Karl Anthony Towns, Jalen Brunson, they've been in the playoffs, they've been in the wars a little bit. Josh Hart and OG Anunoby, who we'll talk about here in a second, an iconic NBA moment that we're going to be seeing for the rest of our lives on that tip-in. But the Spurs, even though they've got Wemby, and he's 22, and it feels like he's ascending to the throne now as the guy in the NBA, they're super young. Wemby's 22, and Harper is 20. So for as much winning as they've done and as dominant as they've looked at times, now you're on this stage, you're in Madison Square Garden, you're in the heart of it, and you just wonder if they have it to take it to the end of a game like that, or are when things start to turn and the Knicks start hitting shots and the crowd starts going crazy, are those 20, 21, 22-year-old kids ultimately, are they going to wilt a little bit? And that ends up being what happened. As a side note, this is why what happened on Wednesday and what happened to Wemby on Wednesday, like we just said, I do think we are probably, and I guess we can't rule them out yet, it's a 3-1 series. I do think the Spurs are going to win on Saturday at home. And then, if you're the Knicks, if you don't win Game 6, then you're going back to San Antonio for a do-or-die Game 7. So it's not done yet. It feels like we're close to being done, though. And I just think it's a good example of crowning somebody a little too soon. It feels like in the NBA more than any other league, and every league does this, but it feels like in the NBA more than any other league, you want to crown them? Crown their ass. we feel like we want to crown the next guy. We can't wait to get to the next guy and the next dynasty and the next unbeatable team. And everybody's already got Wemby past Jokic, and everybody's got Wemby. Wemby's already better than Giannis. He's already better than Jokic. Is he, though? Because while I get it, he's this gargantuan 7'5", whatever, 7'4", 7'5", 7'6" guy. He can knock down shots. He's an intimidating defensive presence. He swats away shots at the basket. He's got this very rare and diversified skill set, and it looks like he is going to be the guy here not too long from now. But is he already? Because he hasn't done anything that Jokic or Giannis have done. That's the example, and we always have Giannis near and dear to our heart, hopefully for a lot longer, but it's feeling like no. We'll talk about that in the mailbag part of the episode. Really feels like we're probably done there, isn't it? I'm sticking to my guns, but it kind of feels like we're done. But as Bucks fans, when we read stuff like that Wemby's already past Giannis, he's already past Jokic, I'm sure Nuggets fans feel the same way. You're thinking, but what? Like Giannis has MVPs. Wemby doesn't have that. Giannis has Defensive Player of the Year awards. Wemby doesn't have that. Jokic has 3 MVPs. Wemby doesn't have 1. Both of them have a ring. And yeah, I think we feel like maybe Giannis underachieved a bit. Injuries were a big part of that. Felt like he should have had more than 1. Feels like Jokic should have more than 1 ring. But they both won titles, and they were both the best player on those championship teams. So is Wemby there yet? Because he hasn't won any of that. It's only year 2. And down the stretch in that game 4, as the Knicks were coming back, he wasn't that good. Turned the ball over, missed 2 critical free throws. Remember Giannis in Game 6 in 2021, knocking down big free throws, scoring 50 in a clinching game. Are we sure Wemby is past those guys like right now? I feel like he's on the trajectory to get past those guys. It is just always amazing. I feel like the NBA falls into that trap more than any other league if we just want to get the next guy already. And then let's say the Spurs would have won this finals, and they may still. But let's say they would have won a championship this year. We'd already be on to the next guy the next year, and Wemby's only 22. Who's the next guy? Who's the next guy? Who's in the draft this year? Who's the next guy that's going to have the crown? But as the Knicks are coming back, that young Spurs team, you could just feel it. I think I started to believe the Knicks could win because they were down 29. So then there was a shot that got it down to 19, I think. And it's 19. That's still a lot. That's still a big hill to climb. But in the NBA, like we just said, it only takes a 3 or 4 minute really good run where one team goes cold and one team gets red hot. And before you know it, it's under a 10-point game. And a 10-point game in the NBA is basically being tied. And I think Jalen Brunson knocked down a 3 that got it down to a 19-point game, whatever it was, 71 or 81, 62, I think it was. And I thought, God, there's 3 minutes left in the third quarter. It's down to 19, and you could feel it at that point. They had hit a couple of threes in a row. They were on, I think, an 8-0 or a 10-0 run at that point. I thought, I think they got a chance here. And they get it down to 15 by the fourth quarter. And again, a 15-point game, even though you're down, when you're at home and you've got the talent they have and the crowd's behind you, you're working off that momentum, you're feeding off that energy, it just feels like they may be able to do this. And they just kept on getting closer and closer and closer and closer. And then toward the end of the game, 2 moments. Jalen Brunson hits a 3 to bring them within 1. And then both teams had their chances. The Knicks end up getting in front 105-104. But then there's a foul, and the Spurs hit 2 free throws, and they go back in front by 1 with, about 30 or 35 seconds left. So in that moment, I'm thinking, God, you climbed this mountain, you overcame the 29-point deficit, and now you're going to lose by a point or 2. And Josh Hart misses a free throw or a layup down the lane, which would have given them the lead. The video of Larry David, 2 people that I do love from Celebrity Row. We talked about Mariska Hargitay was going crazy from Law & Order. I don't know what's the guy's actual name? He's Stabler in the show. Forget his name. But I don't know if he was there or not. Hargitay was going crazy. Taylor Swift and is it Haim? That duo, or 2/3 of that duo. They were sitting courtside. I did like the shirts they had on where they played on the word Knicks, and I think the shirt Taylor had on was Stevie Nicks. Somebody had Nickelback, spelt with the K. I forget what the other one was, but there was another one sort of like that. So it was a loaded Celebrity Row on Wednesday, but I loved Larry David and Jerry Seinfeld. Larry David, the close-up of him almost fainting when Josh Hart misses that layup down the line, and it looks like that's going to maybe cost them the game, is priceless. And it's priceless because it's so authentic and genuine. It's not like, it looks like he's on the Curb TV show, but he is a big Knicks fan, and in that moment you felt like you had your heart ripped out, and his reaction to it that somebody caught on the sideline is just beautiful. But all the Larry David, Jerry Seinfeld stuff coming out of that game on Wednesday was tremendous content. But then you get to a point where the Knicks are down by 1. They turn the ball over, and De'Aaron Fox, for reasons that are inexplicable to everybody, maybe even De'Aaron Fox, there's 10 seconds left. The Spurs are up by 1. They have the ball. just wait to get fouled. Just wait. Just run around and burn 3 or 4 more seconds off the clock. They foul you. You knock down 2 free throws. At worst, I guess at worst, if you miss the free throws, you're only up 1 with 7 seconds left. Then you're right in the situation you were in anyway. But in all likelihood, De'Aaron Fox is a really good free throw shooter. In all likelihood, you're going to be up by 3. And the Knicks, they'll have a chance to tie it. But that's a lot better than the result that there was. And De'Aaron Fox instead tries to lay it up. OG Anunoby, what a dual moment for him. Blocks the shot. Kind of looked like it might have been a foul, but they're not going to call it in that situation. Blocks the shot. The Knicks get the ball back with 5 seconds, and that's what sets up the final sequence. But De'Aaron Fox, my man. I know it's easy for me to say from my podcast, from my podcasting Iron Throne 2 days later. I get that, but man, some situational awareness. Although I will say this, and we talked about this on the air on Thursday when we talked about that play. If you remember back to one of the most iconic moments, maybe I can get it up here, to one of the most iconic moments in Bucks franchise history in Game 5 against the Suns in the finals in 2021, remember after Drew Holiday, happy birthday today, Drew Holiday, after Drew Holiday stole that basketball, it was the exact same situation. The Bucks were up by 1, and the shot clock was dark, so the Suns were going to have to foul. And in that moment, and that's what I was thinking, when Holiday stole that ball, in the moment, I'm thinking, okay, just wait to get fouled. We'll be up by 3 with like 11 seconds left. And then in that moment, Holiday attempts to or decides he's going to throw the alley-oop to Giannis. And we end up getting one of the most iconic moments in Bucks history and NBA Finals history.
The drive, gets inside, leans in, knocked away and stolen by Holiday. Phoenix has to foul, and a Tarik Skubal throws it down. And a foul.
I'm going to cry, I think. I might cry. Is this going to end? This podcast may end. Sometimes the podcasts do end like that, but I've stopped recording with me just gently sobbing in the background. It's all over, isn't it? But in that moment, if Drew Holiday elects to be smart and just peel out and get fouled and knock down a couple of free throws, we don't get that moment. So maybe that's what De'Aaron Fox was thinking about. I doubt it. But since it didn't go right, like imagine if Drew Holiday, if that pass is off the mark and it sails over Giannis' head, goes out of bounds, and the Suns hit a basket and they win the game, everybody the next day is talking about what the hell was Drew Holiday doing? All you had to do was get fouled, and it's over. But it ends up being this legendary moment. So De'Aaron Fox attempts to dunk it or lay it up, and it's blocked, and that sets up the final sequence where OG Anunoby is able to tip in the misfire by Jalen Brunson. But it is just insane the way that game ended and the way that MSG exploded. Did I not get the clip up? I don't think I did. I don't think I saved it on Twitter. Here we go. Here's the putback.
For Jalen Brunson, allow him to operate at the top, 101.
Brunson gets it, fires up a 3. Shot no good. The chip, it's gone. It's gone. It's gone. With 1.2 remaining. Knicks take the lead. OG Anunoby, and it's 107-106.
The crowd reactions from MSG, when they go like with the long shot, it's cool just on the regular TV broadcast too. God, I love that Larry O'Brien trophy at the center of the court. Why would they have had finals without that? How much money could that possibly have cost to put that imprint on there? It looks so badass. And the regular TV broadcast vantage point, it still shows you the crowd exploding. But when you get those upper regions of MSG, you get the long shot of the crowd going nuts.
To operate at the top, 101.
It's just
Brunson
electric.
Fires up a 3.
Terrible shot, but what can you do?
No good. The chip, it's gone. It's gone. It's gone. With 1.2 remaining. Knicks take the lead. OG Anunoby, and it's 107-106.
Legendary. And then they get the stop. I don't even think the Spurs get a shot off in the final 1.2, even though they were inbounding side out. Also explain this to me. Why, when you have a guy who's 7'6", with 1.2 seconds left, and you're inbounding near your three-point line on your side of the floor after the timeout, you're down by 1. Why? And you're both in the bonus, right? Yeah, you're both in the bonus. Why would you not just put Wemby at 7'6", right next to the basket, lob it up to him there? He's going to be able to out-jump and outreach everybody. And if they push him or tackle him or whatever, he's going to get fouled, and then he has a chance to tie it or take the lead at the free throw line. I didn't understand why you would go to a guard in that situation. You've got 1.2 seconds, and you've got a guy who's 7'6" on your team. Don't overthink this. Don't overwork the dough here. But they didn't do that. And it ends up where the Knicks win 107-106. Just an absolute stunner. The largest comeback in NBA Finals history, coming back from 29 points down to win that. And we are now, with that win, with that Knicks bet plus 165, we are sort of sitting in the catbird seat. I do remember seeing on Twitter, too, that night, because, my Twitter follows and the For You page are interwoven with sports and some Sydney Sweeney stuff and more sports and Packers and Brewers and Bucks and all kinds of things that I've liked or stopped on over the years. And, of course, I have a lot of Packer accounts I follow. There was a lot of conversation about how that collapse by the Spurs sort of mirrored the collapse by the Packers in certain playoff games, especially the wild card game against the Indiana Bears. That mirrored that identically, where you thought you had this and you're up by so much, and how could you possibly lose that game? And then I saw some Spurs fan that hopped into a comment section in one of those Packer pages, maybe the Cheesehead TV page, and said, is this really what it's like for you guys? And everybody said, yes, every year we do this. Every year. This is why the Packer fans in January, the sale of bottles of bleach go up in January in the greater Green Bay area, in the Brown County region, because we're just devastated every single January and in very similar fashion. Yes, we do this all the time. We do this all the time. You can't hurt us. We do it all the time. Maybe Matt LaFleur. Is Matt LaFleur coaching? I don't even know who the Spurs coach name is. Was Matt LaFleur coaching the Spurs on Wednesday? Hand up. It's on me. Hand up. It starts with me. It starts right here, guys. It starts right here with me. I guess. Some accountability. Okay. But, yeah, we've got the Knicks plus 165. Game 5 is in San Antonio on Saturday. I guess if I'm a Spurs fan and you're trying to negotiate with yourself and say we still have a chance here, they do. It has only happened one time, right? Was it the Cavaliers that came back in 2016? They came back from the 3-1 deficit to beat the Warriors, and they had a guy named LeBron James in that series, so that was helpful, in his prime. So it has happened. I would say if you're a Spurs fan, you feel like you've pretty much outplayed this team in almost every game, but you just have not been able to close a lot of these games out. You could make a strong case just based on the way the totality of the games went. The Spurs should be up in this 3-1, not the Knicks. So if you're the Spurs, you're thinking a lot like the Cavs did that year, and I think the Cavs had home court. You're thinking no, they don't. They won on the road in Game 7. Anyway, you're thinking, look, get Game 5, and then all of the pressure is on New York then to win Game 6 in front of their hometown crowd because they don't want to have to go back on the road in Game 7. So if you're the Spurs, you're saying get them to a Game 6, and that Game 6 is kind of like their Game 7 because they don't want to come back here for a Game 7. I do think the Spurs are going to win Saturday. I think the Knicks wrap this up in 6. But it is Spurs and Knicks Saturday night, a 7:30 tip time. I could also see a world where when you lose like that, and now look, they've had a couple of days off, and this is a team that won 62 games and knocked off the defending champions on the road. So there is some metal there to them. But there is a chance. When you lose like that, there's always the chance that you're just going to wilt, and you're going to maybe the Knicks storm out to a 20-point lead early and they run away with this thing on Saturday. I do think the Spurs will find a way to win on Saturday, but that game on Wednesday was one of the all-time playoff or NBA Finals games. And then real quick, NHL last night, my Hurricanes. Now, I did not triple down on them as we talked about in the last episode. So I have them minus 180. I have them plus 135. We are cashing the ticket, obviously, on the series going 6 or 7 at plus 105. So that ticket's already good. And now they have a 4-2 win last night. Another really good game. They finally had a good second period. The Hurricanes have been worked in the second period in every game in this series. They actually outscored the Golden Knights 2-0 in the second period, and they win 4-2 last night. So now they are one win away. That is Sunday, and it'll be in Vegas. What is the puck drop time there? 7 o'clock. So 7 o'clock Sunday. This could be a very profitable weekend for your boy. If the Knicks win in Game 5 at plus 165, and then the Canes win in Game 6, and we already got the Game 6 bet covered, and if the Canes win at minus 180, plus 130, I mean, we're talking about totaling up. When you add all of that up, I think we're totaling like a plus 410 or plus 415 payday. If they both win, could be a very nice weekend. My birthday's on Tuesday. Wouldn't that be great? Wouldn't that be great, Bookie Chat? That'd be great for the gambling gods, please. So that was nice last night that the Hurricanes got that done. I didn't even realize either. We talked about the Ric Flair gift that with him wearing the Hurricanes sweater. I didn't realize after all the big moments watching last night, I guess I wasn't really paying that close of attention when they were in Carolina earlier in the series. After anything big or after any goal, there's a Ric Flair woo. Like, this feels like it should be my team, not the Preds. Maybe I should have taken the Hurricanes as my team a couple of years ago instead of the Preds. But that is coming up on Sunday, Game 6, Canes and Golden Knights in Vegas. All right, let's talk about, we'll go first Brewers, and then we will talk about the Green Bay Packers and minicamp and Tucker Kraft and Trey Smack, and a little offensive line news I felt like too this week at the guard position with a rookie getting a lot of reps in these practices. Again, these practices are in shorts, you're not in pads, you're not going full out, but I thought it was interesting the amount of run that Jagger Burton was getting with the offensive line this week. The Brewers continued their road trip in Vegas. Where's my swingers? Did I not get swingers up? Yeah, here we go.
Vegas! Vegas, baby! Vegas!
That is a young Favreau and a young Vince Vaughn. Vinny Vaughn.
Vegas, baby! Vegas!
First game in Vegas, first Major League game in Vegas since 1996. That is, I guess in 96, I read about that this morning. We did some trivia about that on the B Morning Show. I guess in 96, they were renovating Oakland Alameda Coliseum for the Oakland Raiders, and that's why the Oakland Athletics could not play their first week of games there. There's a lot of stuff in that sentence that no longer exists, so just bear with me there. 1996, the Raiders were in Oakland, the A's were in Oakland, but that's why they played some games. It must have been at that park, at the minor league park. That is their AAA ballpark. So Monday's game, they played a game on the moon. I've never seen anything like Monday's game. And you kind of knew you're not at a mile high above sea level, but you're 2,000 feet above sea level, dry air, and you've got no tiers of stadium. It's a minor league park, so there's no second tier or loge level or terrace box or terrace level. Those big stadiums like Coors Field in Denver, even though there's thin air and there's wind, a lot of the nature of a major league ballpark, it blocks a lot of the jet streams, a lot of the wind. You weren't going to have that in Vegas. Even knowing all of that going in, I did not expect what we saw on Monday. Every fly ball, it felt like, was out for a home run. Within the first couple of innings, we already had like 4 home runs on the board. I thought, my God, is every ball in the air going to be out? So you had Kyle Harrison on the hill. I don't know what you take from this. Harrison had been so good. He had only given up 10 runs in 11 starts. 10 runs in 11 starts. That's it. And he gave up 8. And I don't even know how these were all earned. There was some bad defense. I don't know what the official scorer was doing. Maybe having a dart while all these things were happening. I have no clue. Maybe playing blackjack. It did have a Vegas feel to it where you had the pool in right field. I think he had blackjack tables in the bullpen. So it had a very Vegas feel to it. But he gave up 8 earned runs. Probably should have been 5 or 6 earned, but 8 runs total. And that just smokes his ERA a little bit. He was 1.57 coming in. He comes out at 2.72. And he said post-game, he pitched there in the minor league, so he knew what he was getting into and said, look, I've got to be better. I know the conditions aren't good here, but I've pitched here before. I've got to be better. I don't know how much I hold any of the pitching numbers against anybody in this series. This may be like one of those things where you have a college course or a high school course, and you get 3 tests the entire year, and they just throw one out. If you're Pat Murphy or Chris Hook or Matt Arnold, you may look at these pitching numbers and just say, we're throwing these out. What can we ascertain from any of this? So he got beat up a little bit in the 3rd inning, and again, bad defense behind him. Terang hit a home run, Vaughn hit a home run. So the Brewers had a 4-2 lead, then they're down 8-4, then they're down 9-5. Bauer's 2-run shot made it 9-7. Andrew Vaughn tied it 2 RBI double, and you end up going to extras. The Brewers score 4 runs in the top of the 10th inning. So after the Contreras 3-run bomb, it's 14-10. Should have gone for 2. Yeah. Nobody made that joke on social media. Should have gone for 2. But you're feeling like, even in this stadium with how wonky that game has been, the other problem they've had, and they had the whole series, it's Vegas, so it's so dry that infield is like concrete. And you could water it all day. I'm sure it's not going to make a lick of difference in those conditions. It's 115 degrees and drier than a fart out there. So the ball, if you hit the ball into the dirt, it popped up like a Super Bowl. Like, it was impossible to know how to play defense in that game. But still, up 14-10, I'm feeling like, okay, we should win this game 14-10. The funniest moment for me, and it wasn't funny at the time, the A's get 3 on the board against Ashby, 14-13, and then Jonah Heim hits a fly ball to right field with 2 outs. And William Contreras and Aaron Ashby are so convinced this is a can of corn pop-up, center, right field, middle of the road fly ball that they're basically shaking hands. Like, Contreras pops his helmet off and says, okay, slaps his hands together. Ashby's making his way down there to shake his hand. Like, they think this is over at 14-13. And I don't think that was hubris. I think these guys have played a million baseball games, and they know what a pop fly to right field looks like and what a home run looks like. But then the ball just kept on carrying, and whoop, it's gone. And everybody was shocked. So it's a 14-14 game. The Brewers eventually scored the go-ahead run in the 12th inning, and Chad Patrick, who had a rough Wednesday, he was really good in the bottom of the 12th, needed a couple of strikeouts and got them, and he got the final out with runners on the corners, and the Brewers win that game 15-14. There's a lot of discussion, and there was the whole series. Now, the scoring calmed down on Tuesday, and especially Wednesday. We didn't have another game like that where you had 29 runs and 34 hits and 16 reviews. They had 16 ABS reviews. The camera angle was all weird. Everything about it was bizarre. But you had this debate then on baseball Twitter and Brewer Twitter of Major League Baseball should be ashamed of themselves for playing actual regular season games at a park like this. How can these games count for anything? And I guess I support that a little bit. You know, both teams that are playing in the same situation. I'll say I did have a couple of texters. We had one listener that was out in the area on the B Morning Show that was in that area that went to a couple of the games and emailed me and said that they were a lot of fun. I mean, everybody was having fun. A lot of Brewers fans out there. Small venue. Felt like a spring training game, I think, was his assessment. And I do think for a game, especially like Monday, I do think it's one of those things where if you're there, like also, it's a 9:05 start time Central Time. It's 7:05 in Vegas. So if you're in Vegas and you're at a game like that, a Major League game, and they're popping off home runs left and right, and you're probably betting on the game, yeah, I think it's a lot of fun when you're out there. But watching a product like that on TV, I don't know how I feel about that. It would be like, it's like a bachelor party. It's like if you're in the bachelor party, you're having a great time. Everybody's popping drinks and you're going to the club. It's the difference of if you're in the bachelor party or you're observing the bachelor party. Not a lot of people want to watch the bachelor party or be near the bachelor party when it hits the club at 1 o'clock in the morning. You don't want to be adjacent to it at the bar at midnight after they've been going for 5 or 6 hours. That's what I would liken it to. Yeah, if you're out there, it's a ton of fun. If you're in the party, if you're in the mix, you're having a great time. You're probably annoying the people around you, but you're having a great time. So I don't doubt that if you were in that environment and you were at the stadium, and again, it's 10 o'clock when that thing wraps up and you're probably going out and having a good time after that, yeah, it's probably a lot of fun. But I don't know how much of a enjoyable TV product it was if you're a baseball purist, which I am. I will say, you know, it's a couple of games, and really it only ends up being one game like that in the series. So is that the end of the world over the course of a 162-game schedule? No. But as a baseball traditionalist, I did not find Monday terribly enjoyable other than the Brewers were able to escape with a win. Now, that set them up. They were 4-0 on the road trip after that win on Monday. You swept Colorado and had to rally a few times there. You get the 15-14 win, so you've already secured the winning road trip, and you're trying to get a little greedy here. Can we go 5-1? Can we go 6-0 on this road trip? Robert Gasser on the hill on Tuesday. Not good, but once again, like we just talked about, I don't know how much stock I'm putting into how bad he was. He had 7 strikeouts and gave up 4 home runs. That's kind of the world you're living in out there, where if you miss a pitch by an inch or two, it's going to be a home run, and maybe you get a bunch of strikeouts too. He wasn't missing by that much. He was coming off of, on Tuesday, that was his 4th start of the year. He was coming off of his best start, 5 innings of 1-run ball, and it felt like he had kind of taken a step forward. And then just not good on Wednesday night or Tuesday night, and you end up losing that game 7-5. Got close a couple times, had the early lead. Churro hit a home run to put it up 2-0, and they were down 6-3, got within 6-5, down 7-5, and really did not rally late. The Athletics bullpen, both Tuesday and Wednesday, was tremendous in tough conditions. They were locked down, and the Brewers couldn't get anything going late innings either Tuesday or Wednesday. And you lose that game 7-5. Gasser took the loss. They have lost all 4 games he's pitched in. There are still a lot of pitching injuries, so they're going to need him to make a few more starts. Like we talked about with the pitching assessment, though, even though he goes 5 innings and gives up 6 runs, I don't know how much I'm gleaning from the start that Gasser had on Tuesday. And he is going to, because they need him to, he is going to make at least 1 more start, probably 2 or 3 more starts. So you lose that game 7-5. Then we get to Wednesday. Still a chance for a series win and a 5-1 trip, and it looked like they were going to get it. Jumped out to the early lead again, Andrew Vaughn. This guy's numbers. He did, I don't think he played on, did he play on Monday? I think he did play on Monday. Hold on, let's go to the game log. This guy's numbers, I realize that a part of the reason he's more of a part-time player right now is that Jake Bauers has been so good, and they both play the same position, and you can use Bauers a little bit more on the outfield, but they're both natural first basemen, so who do you pick there when 2 of your better offensive players are both in the same spot? And also, as we talked about, yeah, he played all 3 games. Oh, he only pinch hit on Tuesday, so he started Monday and Wednesday. His numbers against righties are not good. His numbers against lefties are insane. Like, rookie setting, Ken Griffey Jr., N64 baseball insane. He is hitting something like .565 against lefties this year. He just crushes them. And he is starting to get more hits against righties, but he comes out of the Wednesday game. He had 2 more hits with an RBI and a walk on Wednesday. Andrew Vaughn, who shaved his head, by the way. Who was the emailer we had the last mailbag episode that was asking about that, that was talking about, what was his name? Wasn't that the second mailbag episode or the first one where we had the guy, and I went through this too. I went through exactly what Andrew Vaughn's going through. He's 28, and it was about the same age for me. I remember we talked about all the stages of accepting the fact that you're losing your hair on the hairspray and being afraid of a stiff breeze. Area man afraid of a stiff, balding man, thinning hair afraid of a stiff breeze. And we were giving out advice there. Well, Vaughn finally shaved that he had a really bad comb over. I mean, really bad. It almost made him look like this weird old school baseball player, like Oil Can Vaughn or something. Like he should have a nickname like that. And the way that he wears with his socks all the way up and the comb over, he just looks like he's from the 1930s or the 1920s, from a dead ball era. He finally shaved the head, but he just keeps hitting 2 more hits on Wednesday. He's hitting .370 with a .980 OPS, a .980 OPS. You've got to find a way to get this guy more at-bats. But he had the RBI to start things on Wednesday. You got a solo shot from Gary Sanchez, the Kraken unleashed again, 465 feet. That was a no-doubter in any park, even with the thin air, even with the dry air at a mile high almost. That would have been gone in any park. And then Churio hit a solo shot, and he hit it off the camera guy in center field. He hit it off the camera. It didn't hit the guy, but the guy that's positioned in center field for that vantage point that we always have from behind the pitcher, that's where he hit it. He hit it 420 feet. So you're up 3-0. Brandon Sproat on the hill on Wednesday. We have talked ad nauseum about Brandon Sproat and how uneven he's been. 2019 Corbin Burns. I know, John, we've heard it 1,000 times. Well, his last time in Denver, we said right on the Monday podcast, 5 innings of 3-run ball. He finally put up zeros in the 4th and 5th inning. So that felt like a quarter, or what do we give him, a quarter or a half step forward. Then on Wednesday, he had a no-hitter through 4 innings, and then he gives his 6 innings of 1-run ball, gives up the solo shot in the 6th inning, did have 5 shutout before that, but in those conditions, in the Denver and Vegas conditions, 5 innings of 3-run ball, 6 innings of 1-run ball, kind of feels like we're going to give him a full step. Combined between those two, we're going to give him a full step forward. The thing, like we've always talked about with Sproat, is can you be consistent? Look, he's going to have bad starts. Everybody's going to have bad starts. At some point, The Miz is going to have a bad start. Hopefully not tonight. At some point, he will, though. Everybody's going to have him. But we just need to see more consistency from Sproat. And again, with the injuries, he's going to continue to get the ball here for the next month or so. That's about as good as he's looked. I think that's his best start. He has one other start this year, early in the year, where I think he went 6 2/3 of 1 run. But even he said, given the park they were playing in, he said post-game, that has to be my best start this year. Now, the problem was he got to the 7th inning up 3-1, and Chad Patrick comes in, and you know I love Chad Patrick out of the bullpen. He had not given up a run out of the bullpen. Now, he had that spot start or the bullpen game, but he started that game. 4 innings of 1-run ball against St. Louis a few weeks back. But since he has been coming out of the bullpen, he had not given up a run. Well, he comes in the 7th inning, and in the span of 8 pitches, 8, solo home run, double, 2-run home run, just like that, you're down 4-3. In 8 pitches, it came at you quick. And the Brewers never bounced back. Now, the Brewers had a chance on Wednesday. They were 1 for 9 or 1 for 10 with runners in scoring position. In that environment, only scoring 3 runs and not scoring after the 3rd inning. As angry as some people are going to be about Chad Patrick, as angry as some people were about Pat Murphy going to the bullpen when Sproat only had 68 pitches, the problem from my perspective, and Murph talked about this postgame too, is that you had an offense in an offensive ballpark that just kind of dried up after 3 runs in the first 3 innings, and they had their chances all night long to tack on, and even when they got down 4-3, you had 2 on with 1 down in the 8th inning, you pinch hit Contreras, he hits into an inning double play. They had a litany of chances to come back and put some runs on the board in a ballpark where you need offense, and they couldn't get it done. That said, Chad Patrick was just not good in that 8-pitch stretch, and that's all he went. Aaron Ashby came in and finished that inning off. You're going to have the people, like you always do when the bullpen blows a game, and when the starting pitcher does not have a high pitch count, which Sproat did not. He had 68 pitches in his 6 innings of 1-run ball. You are going to have a lot of Brewers fans say, well, Pat Murphy, classic over-managing from Murph. Could have left a guy in there who was rolling and only had 68 pitches, but no, had to go to the bullpen, and then the bullpen blows it. I have no problem with Pat Murphy going to the bullpen like we just talked about. Brandon, it has been like pulling teeth to get Brandon Sproat to get through the 4th or 5th inning, and he gave you 6. The last thing you want to do is put Brandon Sproat back out there for the 7th inning, and then if he gives up those home runs, then you're all the way back to square one. You are thanking, regardless of pitch count in that moment, you are thanking your lucky stars that he gave you 6 innings of 1-run ball in that environment. So I have no problem going to the bullpen. The issue I would have if I were to take an issue with the bullpen management or the game management on Wednesday is that in that 7th inning, 2 of the 3 hitters that Patrick had to face were lefties. Patrick's numbers overall are quite good. They are not that great against lefties. And you had Aaron Ashby, who ends up coming in anyway. He's one of the best left-handed relievers in baseball. So if I were to do it, and again, anytime I try to second-guess Pat Murphy or Matt LaFleur or Doc Rivers, but anytime I second-guess a move Pat Murphy makes, I like to ask myself this question. As I'm thinking about it in my head and I'm ruminating over this, I like to think, John, are you the 2-time reigning NL Manager of the Year? And do you have those 2 trophies in your trophy case at home? Or do you have a bowling trophy from 1996? The answer is the latter. So when I think about second-guessing Murphy and things go wrong and the move didn't work out, I like to ask myself that question, are you the reigning 2-time Manager of the Year? And if the answer to that is no, and so far it has been for most of my life, if the answer to that is no, I just tip my cap and say, you know what? Sometimes moves don't work. They just don't work out. If we were to tinker, maybe you start that inning with Ashby, you have the lefty-lefty matchups, and you avoid Chad Patrick until the 8th inning maybe, where he's got more righty matchups, and you're in that setup role in the 8th inning. But I don't have a problem going to a guy who had not given up a run out of the bullpen in 7 or 8 appearances when you're up 3-1 late in the game. It just didn't work out. And you lose that game 4-3, so you lose the series, but still, a 4-2 road trip, given the conditions and the weirdness of Coors Field and a minor league park in Vegas. You feel good about that. It does end with a bit of a letdown where you could have had a 5-1 trip or a 6-0 trip, but it's 4-2. That's not bad. 41-25 coming back home. The Cardinals did lose last night. They've been kind of hot. That ended a 6-game winning streak for them. So you've got a 4-game lead right now in the NL Central. The Phillies are in town tonight. This should be a fun series. Philadelphia started the year terribly, underachieving on every level, given the fact that you've got Schwarber on that roster, Bryce Harper on that roster, a whole cavalcade of all-star caliber starting pitchers. And I think they fired their manager and they went to Don Mattingly. I'm pretty sure Mattingly is their manager right now, and he's been great. So they were 10-ish games under 500. They've been red hot. They are 37-31 coming into tonight. They're second place behind the Braves. The Braves have been a freight train. Best record in Major League Baseball. So the Phillies have made it all the way back to second place, but they're still how many games behind Atlanta? They are 8 games behind Atlanta. Atlanta's 45-23. Which the Brewers are not that far behind, but Philly has made their way up to second place. They are still 8 games back. But this team, with their roster, with their lineup, and with their pitching, this should be a team that is a playoff team. There's a lot of time. Maybe they can come back and win the AL East if the Braves go cold and the Phillies stay hot. But the Phillies feel like a team that's going to be in the mix for a playoff spot pretty much the whole year at this point. So this is a good test. At home, the Brewers facing a team that they might see. Well, we got a long way to go here, but you might see this team in October. Let's see how these two teams stack up against each other. My wife and I are going tonight. Jacob Mizorowski is on the hill. I have not seen The Miz live. I'm The Miz. I have not seen The Miz live yet, so I'm really excited for that. 6:40 tonight, Shane Drowan, my boy, goes on Saturday, 6:10. And then you get the Kyle Harrison-Christopher Sanchez matchup on Sunday. Remember, Sanchez is the guy that stole the NL Pitcher of the Month of May award away from Miz by not giving up a run. Sanchez right now is the major league leader as he's still in ERA, and Miz is in second place. Oh, no, Miz got past him. Sanchez must have given up a run his last time out. He gave up 2 runs his last time out. Okay. So right now, Mizorowski leads Major League Baseball in strikeouts and leads Major League Baseball in ERA. He is 1.5. Sanchez is 1.54. It's a shame you don't get those two guys. There's nothing you can do about it, obviously, but it is a shame that you don't have a pitching matchup where it's the Miz and Sanchez. That game might have lasted 90 minutes. In the pitch clock era, with the way those guys work and mow guys down, that's a 6:40 first pitch night. We might have been done by 8 o'clock tonight. But that is tonight. Mizorowski on the hill, Drowan Saturday, and Kyle Harrison looks for a bounce back after that weird start in Vegas on Monday as he'll take on Sanchez. That's a good lefty-lefty matchup anyway on Sunday, Harrison and Sanchez. Now let's talk about the Packers. Minicamp this week. And this is the mandatory minicamp. Everybody's got to be there. Everybody's got to be there for OTAs too. But, one of those things where technically the Packers can't fine anybody if they're not there for OTAs, but you can fine them if they're not there for minicamp. So to me, minicamp revolved around three things, and we'll talk about Tucker Kraft last. Number one, Trace Mack was not making kicks consistently. Packer fans are haunted by kickers not making kicks since Mason Crosby was retired or let go, basically. And we've had Carlson and all the guys, Greg Joseph and Narvdog and McManus, who was good for a year, then bad last year. And then you draft a kicker, you waive McManus. So this week was the first week in a practice where you had Havrasik and you had Trace Mack kicking, and Trace Mack's numbers were not good. Now, I'm not going to be worried about kicking in June. I am not. Repeat after me. I will not be worried about kicking in June. I will not be worried about kicking in June. He was 5 of 9 on Tuesday. Yuck. And he got a little better Wednesday. Thursday was better efficiency-wise, but at the end of practice, he missed a 35-yarder. If I were to be concerned, and I'm not, like I just told you, I am not concerned about kicking in June. I would like to reiterate that point. If I were to be concerned about kicking in June, it's not just the misses. He has a lot of 35-yard, 37-yard. These are chip shots. I don't know if I care as much if he's missing a 54-yarder. I mean, you want him to hit those, but if it's his first practice in the NFL, his first mandatory practices in the NFL, and he's missing from 58, 57, whatever, I'm not losing a ton of sleep over that, but it was the amount of chip shot misses that he had. That was not encouraging. And Lucas Havrasik was actually really good. He was near perfect. He was damn near perfect. He was 8 of 8, I think, on Wednesday. So even though when we talk about the kicking battle, now that McManus is removed from it after you waived him, and like we've said a million times, Havrasik would have to be otherworldly and Smack would just have to fall on his face, I think, for Havrasik to take that job because you have invested draft capital now in Trace Mack. You traded up, you burned a pick and a pick to pick him up. It's going to be very difficult for Havrasik to unseat him when you have that type of investment in a guy. But Havrasik was really good this week, so Trace Mack didn't take long. We're already worried about the kicker, already. It does make me wonder, and I think we talked about this when they waived McManus. Look, McManus was bad last year and was horrifically bad. San Antonio Spurs-esque against the Bears in the wild card round in Chicago. Just horrible. If he makes any of the 3 kicks he misses, you probably win that game. I do wonder, though, and I know why they did it, but you have a veteran. You just gave him a 3-year deal last year. He was entering year 2 of that 3-year deal where you're paying him $3 or $4 million a year. He's a veteran. He's kicked in Super Bowls. He hasn't been good in the playoffs. He missed the kick in the wild card round in Philly, too. But you've got a veteran with some experience. Would it have been the worst thing to keep him around and have all 3 of those guys battle? Or maybe you waive Havrasik and you leave the veteran and the rookie? I understand to take it out of the realm of competition. They didn't want to have the veteran with the resume breathing down the rookie's neck. He already has. Trace Mack, with the fact that he was the only kicker picked in the draft, and they traded up to get him, he already has immense amounts of pressure on him, and he's going to kick in bad weather really for the first time in his career. So I understand the psychological idea of let's take a guy who has been really good for the most part in his career, let's take him out of the equation so that will lessen the pressure on Trace Mack. But you paid him $1 million in March. Could we not have kept him around until July? Could we not have kept around until training camp to battle with Trace Mack? And just to have that guy in case Smack does fall on his face and he's bad at every level, then you have McManus still and he's already under contract. So I don't know. I guess we'll find out as the offseason wears on. And if he continues to struggle in OTAs next week, which the rookies are sticking around, the veterans are going home for the last week of OTAs next week, and then training camp at the end of July in the preseason, if he figures it out, he's knocking kicks home and we're feeling confident, then whatever. It is what it is. But I do wonder, after a bad week, you do think about as a fan, did we have to release McManus? Did we have to release McAnus this early? Or could we have kept him on just in case this Trace Mack thing doesn't work out? So that was a story. Another story was Lucas Van Ness, tremendous by all accounts in practice. He was tremendous, disruptive in the backfield. We know we're not going to have Micah Parsons, we talked about on the Monday podcast, until probably mid-October. You would love for Van Ness to have his Neo moment here and to figure things out and to be a good edge rusher, not just for his career in Green Bay and for the early part of the season, but until you get Micah back, you wonder where that pressure is going to come from because you've got a lot of unknown commodities right now as edge rushers. It would be great if Lucas Van Ness in year 4, and they picked up his 5th-year option, if he would live up to some of that top whatever it was. What was he, the 11th or 12th overall pick or 13th overall pick in the draft a few years ago? If he could live up to some of that and just look like that guy and be healthy and put pressures. I don't even need sacks. I love sacks, but I would just like for him to be in the backfield a lot and to force guys to make moves earlier than they normally would. If he can just put pressures on guys, I would feel good about that. But you've got to navigate this first 5-ish weeks or 6 weeks without Micah Parsons. If Lucas Van Ness can be that guy, that would be fantastic. And he said he was feeling good, feeling healthy. He said he's focusing on having fun. That's what he said after practice, after a really good practice on Wednesday. I don't mean to laugh. I'm sure he is. It just sounded like a 24, 25-year-old guy who got broken up with, and then he was moping around for a little bit, and then his friends, all right, buck up. Let's have a couple 2-3 beers here, and we'll get you back in the right direction. You're young. Your whole life is ahead of you. And then I'm just going to focus on being me. I'm going to focus on having fun and being me, which is fine for a guy that's his age. It just kind of made me chuckle in the post-game on Wednesday, or in the post-practice on Wednesday, where he said, I'm just trying to have fun. I'm just focusing on having fun. Just focusing on Lucas. So that was a story. And then the other story was Tucker Kraft. So he wasn't going full-on practice, still coming back from the ACL injury he suffered toward the middle to late part of last year. He is on a much more accelerated timeline as compared to Micah Parsons, and his injury was 3 weeks earlier, so that makes sense. I kind of thought, even with that Tucker Kraft was probably going to miss the first week or two. That's what I thought heading into the offseason. We knew we'd see him before Micah. We always kind of thought Micah was going to be end of September, October, somewhere in there. My thinking was Tucker's probably going to miss week 1, maybe week 2, and you see him week 3. Well, that was not Tucker Kraft's assessment. Tucker Kraft, after practice on Wednesday, and we blogged about it, had a lot to say. Felt like Stone Cold Steve Austin or The Rock or somebody leading up to a WrestleMania. He had a lot to say outside of his locker room, and a lot of it was very good.
I'm anticipating that Goody will just, start me on the pup, just allow me to hit training camp running, if you understand what I'm saying. Starting camp on the pup and coming off camp, my anticipation is, they don't really want us talking about our injuries and stuff, but with how I feel, I would say I'm going to get all the conditioning I need in camp to start week 1 on no pitch count.
Week 1, no pitch count. That's a pretty bold statement, and like he said there, they don't like us to talk about these kind of things, but I'm going to talk about it anyway. He sounded very confident. Now, that does sort of change the beginning of the year outlook to me. We did talk about, when the schedule came out, how it felt like they were done not favor by the NFL because the NFL wants to wait until their best players get back until they're the primetime game or the late afternoon game or whatever. It feels like they got an easier schedule to begin the year. But if he's back week 1, and you've got, now knock on wood here, but if you've got Love healthy week 1 with Watson, Reed, Golden, and Kraft all healthy, look, we don't know what's going to happen with Josh Jacobs. Another week has gone by and no further information from the Brown County DA's office. And I think a lot of the reporters have submitted open records requests to kind of figure out what's going on there. And there's been nothing revealed or released yet. I don't even know if you can do that, but I think they have requested. So we don't know what's going on there. But if you have Love, Kraft, Golden, Reed, and Watson all healthy, my expectation is, with all those guys now in year 3 or 4 or 5, my expectation is that offense is going to be humming. And I kind of expect that anyway, but if you have Kraft in there and he's a full go, like he said, no pitch count, then I'm hoping for 30-ish points a game, 25, 28, 28, 30, 30-plus points a game in those early weeks. If you've got all of those guys, your full complement of weapons out there. Now, he also talked about a contract extension. Reed had his contract extension. Watson got his contract extension. Goody has hinted all offseason that Kraft is the next guy on the list, and it sounds like he is.
I'd say my goal is I want to play for this organization my entire career. I'm spoiled to have been drafted here, and this is all I know. Green and gold is all I know. So we'd like to keep it that way, and my agent and the Packers front office, they're going to be in those talks in time when it comes. You guys will find out eventually. So
that's happening. I mean, that is right. That's happening. That, I think, will probably happen before training camp. So you're going to have – that's the offense. That is the offense. Again, we're not sure what happens at running back. I don't think we're sure. Even if Jacobs comes back and this is a whole nothing burger, and again, I don't mean to downplay it like that, but if it ends up being nothing in terms of football and he doesn't miss any time, I don't know if they're going to have Jacobs here beyond this year anyway. But that's the offense then. Kraft gets the extension. Golden's under the rookie contract for 3 more years. Reed's 3 years. Watson's 4 years. Love's under contract for 4 or 5 more years. That is the offense, for better or worse, and I think it's for better. That will be the offense going forward. Now, they did ask Kraft as well. This was the quote of the day. And we blogged about this. This is them asking Tucker Kraft, what does this Packer team have to do in order to get over the hump? You've been in the playoffs the past 3 years as the 7th seed. You only have one playoff win to show for it. How do we take the next step?
I'm not saying it's a culmination of players' failures, but we're not winning. So we just have to, each man has to nut up or shut up. I think it's that simple, that you just do your job one play at a time. I hear a play in the huddle. I look at my assignment, my alignment, my technique. I think 1 to 2 things that might change that play in a snapshot. Here comes the snap, and you never get a single play back in the NFL. So I think you just have to have the right attitude.
This guy's a beaut. He's just, the gyms are beauts. This guy is an absolute beauty.
Just have to, each man has to nut up or shut up. I think it's that simple.
I do think there's a T-shirt already.
Has to nut up or shut up.
How could there not? As soon as I heard that, I thought, that's a T-shirt. Nut up or shut up. He was on his way, likely last year, to becoming either the best tight end in the NFL or the top 2 or 3 tight end in the NFL with the numbers he was putting up, how good he is blocking. He is the full complement at that position. And if there are no after effects of that ACL, I expect that he is going to be a 60, 70 catch, 900,000 yard, 8 to 10 touchdown kind of guy. But you just love his attitude. This is the leadership they need.
Each man has to nut up or shut up. I think it's that simple.
Okay, good. Good to go. Well, that was news this week. Oh, and the one other thing, I'm not sure how much stock you put into June practices and offensive line alignment. Aaron Banks is hurt, I believe. Let me just Google this here. We do a lot of live Googling. What's one more among friends? Aaron Banks injury. I'm actually somewhat surprised that they stuck with Aaron Banks after the year he had last year, and they had outs in that contract. He is, I guess, a minicamp holdout. LaFleur held Banks out of the minicamp sessions to manage his health and prevent setbacks after a rough first year in Green Bay. Well, the guy that took his spot was getting rave reviews, 5th-round draft pick, Jagger Burton, which is just a great name. He's got kind of a great sort of Tausch look to him, not with the hair, but he has that sort of look to him, just a perfect fit on this franchise and in this part of the country. Jagger Burton. What do we say? Moves like Jagger bombs. He should have a whole fan base called the Jagoffs. No, we shouldn't do that. That would be incredible. Now there's a T-shirt. What I'm doing it here is knock next time. That would be the motto of the Jagoffs. Knock next time. That's all right. Anyway, but you could have the Jager bombs, the Jagoff. I mean, I think he's going to be a fan favorite, but they talked about him, and LaFleur talked about him extensively either on Wednesday or Thursday about how good he looked, and he was with the starting units. It's shorts, it's summer, they're not in full pads, we're not full go here, but it is at least interesting that the rookie 5th-round pick, who is a guard by trade and could probably play a little center too if you needed him to, but it is interesting that a guy that young that you're kind of expecting to be a versatile backup, he was looking like a starter out there all week. We'll see if that does continue, the Jagoffs. We'll see if that continues into training camp. That was also a little bit of newsworthy notes coming out of minicamp this week. All right, let's do some mailbag.
You've got mail.
But you remember this. When you control the mail, you control information.
Mail time!
Mailed it.
No, but I'm talking about like mail.
Stupid junk mail.
Don't forget, it is strangebrewpod@AOL.com. Strangebrewpod@AOL.com. Send those in there. We've got 2 Packers, 1 Bucks, and 1 Brewers. So since we're just talking about the Packers, let's stick with the Packers. Our buddy Josh and Sheboygan, this will be quick. We talked about this on the last episode. Josh and Sheboygan wrote, John, is your nightmare scenario that Malik Willis comes into Lambeau Field, throws 4 touchdowns, and beats Jordan Love in December? What week is that game? That is kind of my nightmare, isn't it? It's only my nightmare if Jordan Love is uneven or not good. I don't anticipate, though. Do you, even if you're a Jordan Love hater? Even if you are somebody that does not believe that Jordan Love is the guy, that he's the franchise quarterback, that he's the guy that has a chance to win the Super Bowl, if you don't believe that, you don't believe that. We have to at least concede right at this point that he's at least a good quarterback and above average. Can we at least settle on above average? If you are a Jordan Love hater, the haters and the losers of which there are many, if you are a Jordan Love, hater's probably strong. If you are a Jordan Love non-believer, if you don't believe that Jordan Love is capable of winning an MVP, if you don't believe that Jordan Love is capable of leading a team to a Super Bowl, that's probably if you're not with Jordan Love, that's probably more true than people that just hate Jordan Love and think he's bad. If you think Jordan Love is bad, you've got rocks in your head. I can understand maybe if you think he's okay, but he's not the guy to win a Super Bowl. He's not the guy who's going to win a Super Bowl MVP or a regular season MVP. I can understand that a little bit more. But it's only my nightmare. Yeah, it's December 20th. It's week 15. It's only my nightmare if Jordan Love has been bad a lot of the year and Malik Willis has been great a lot of the year, and Miami comes in then and he outplays Love and he's running all over the place and he runs for a touchdown, throws for 3 touchdowns, and the Packers lose at home on Sunday and it drops them to whatever, 7-8 or 6-7, whatever their record would be there, 6-7. And that's my nightmare scenario. If the Packers are where we expect them to be by week 15, which would be, 8-4 at worst, or 9-3, something like that heading into that game. If the Packers are there and Jordan Love's playing well and they're on their way to a playoff appearance or a division title, look, you don't want to lose any game, but if the Packers are playing reasonably well heading into that game, my guess is Malik could be playing well, but Miami's probably not going to win a ton, if that makes sense. Malik could have a very good year, and that's still not probably going to be enough to make Miami a playoff contending team. That is my expectation coming into that game, that the Packers are 9-3, the Dolphins are 4-8 or something. And then I guess I'd be bummed if the Packers lose because I don't want the Packers to lose any game. But if they lose, they lose, and I'm not maybe losing sleep over it. But yeah, if the Packers are underachieving and Love is underachieving and the Dolphins are overachieving and Malik Willis having a great year, which, by the way, does help the Packers. That does help the compensatory pick they're going to get from Malik Willis. We want Malik Willis to have an awesome year. My understanding is that it caps at a third-round pick. So depending on whatever the numbers he puts up or whatever the next contract is, that it could cap out at a third-round pick. And you only gave up a seventh-rounder to get him. And he won you a handful of games and was great as a backup. So that's just everything about the Malik Willis acquisition is going to be green check mark, green check mark, green check mark. But we are rooting for Malik Willis to be good in Miami, and I will be rooting for him. I have no stake outside of the Steelers, I guess, now in the AFC. I'm kind of pot committed to Mike McCarthy and Rodgers and the Steelers. But we will be rooting for Malik Willis. We want him to be the starter. We want him to have a really good year because that is going to help what kind of pick the Packers get back in next year's draft. And you need some more depth because, again, next year you still don't have a first-round pick because of the Parsons deal. You're not going to get a first-rounder for him, but it would help to get another third-rounder for him. So we are pulling for Miami. I understand the reasoning for that email, though. So I appreciate that from Josh. That would be, if it ends up tipping the scales between a playoff appearance or a non-playoff appearance, or if Love has been bad and Willis has been that good, then that's a nightmare scenario. I am not anticipating that heading into week 15 or whatever we just said on December 20th, but yeah, that could be a problem for me. Also, from our buddy AJ, another Packer-related question. He said, mailbag episode, my question would be, biggest position concern going into the year? Corner for sure, running back, offensive line, D-line. I guess if you could power rank those. My number one concern about this team in general, and add Trey Smack maybe to the list. My number one concern right now on June 12th is one person, and that person's name is Jordan Morgan. And when we just talked about Lucas Van Ness had a really good practice this week, a lot of the time he spent in the backfield, he was working against Jordan Morgan. So Rasheed Walker was a fine left tackle. I wouldn't say he was good or Pro Bowl level or All-Pro level. And the fact that he had no free agent market when they let him go this year, that shows you that that's kind of how other teams feel about Rasheed Walker. If Rasheed Walker had to start the whole year again, I guess I'm not losing sleep over it. But you wanted an upgrade there. You spent a first-round pick on Morgan 2 years ago. He's supposed to be a left tackle. It is time to find out whether or not he can be that. But the fact that they moved on from Rasheed Walker and there was almost no free agent market for him kind of shows you that he is a borderline starter maybe, or a guy if you need him to fill in for 4 or 5 games, you feel comfortable with that. I don't mind them moving on from Rasheed Walker, even though he did bring some stability there for the last couple of years. Jordan Morgan is the number one thing, and we've discussed that this offensive line, a big part of the problems they had last year were injuries with the offensive line, but the offensive line underachieved. Even before the injuries, Elton Jenkins wasn't the guy they thought he was going to be at center, and other than Zach Tom, who was hurt most of the year, you didn't have a lot of consistency. Aaron Banks underachieved. Belton was fine at right guard once he got there. Sean Ryan was okay once he filled in. They gave him the 3-year, $33 million contract, given his age, and now he knows he's going to be the center going forward. I'm comfortable with that. But left tackle is pretty damn important, everybody. It is the most important spot on an offensive line with a right-handed quarterback. And you've got a guy now that has lost 2 camp battles. He battled with Walker for that job 2 years ago and lost. He battled with Walker a year ago and he lost. And I understand from Goody's perspective, okay, it's year 3. You kind of got to get off the pot here with Jordan Morgan. And Rasheed Walker wasn't setting the world on fire. So you're saying, okay, we drafted this guy first round 2 years ago. It is time. This is the Kevin Green. It is time. But I have very big concerns about a guy who has lost 2 camp battles the last 2 years and who has not proven, even in spot duty, that he can be a real consistent tackle in the NFL. I've got concerns there about him occupying the most important spot on the offensive line. If you cannot hold up there, if you cannot protect Jordan Love's blind side, this team is going to have a lot of problems. And that was an issue last year, just the offensive line in totality. They feel like with Sean Ryan now as the guy at center, hopefully Zach Tom is healthy. Is Belton going to be the right guard, or maybe Jagger Burton's going to be the right guard? They think Aaron Banks is going to be the left guard. We'll see, and they are hoping that Jordan Morgan can be good at left tackle. That, to me, is the number one concern because you simply have to have better offensive line play than they got last year, and that is the biggest part of it. If I had to rank the other things, corner is always an issue. Keyshawn Nixon, is he going to hold out? That was a story this week, too. He wants more money. He thinks he's the number one corner. He said he's the number one corner. He declared it, so he must be. He was okay in spots last year. He gambled way too much, and it burned him way too much at the end of last year. But unless Brandon Cisse sets the world on fire, he had a good week of practice, too. But we're a long way from Brandon Cisse, I think, being the number one corner as a rookie at 20 years old. Unless he sets the world on fire, in all likelihood, you have Keyshawn Nixon as your number one and Carrington Valentine as your number 2, and you're kind of in the same spot you were last year with those being your 2 guys. There was some discussion about Keyshawn Nixon maybe holding out for a little bit more money here this offseason, which I don't know how that's going to go for him. That is always a concern, though. So, yeah, offensive line, then I'd say corner, and then I'd say kicker. I think kicker's my number 3. Running back, Marshawn Lloyd's a problem because he can't stay on the field. He actually practiced the full week this week, so that was good news. And we have no idea what's happening with Josh Jacobs. If Josh Jacobs misses games or he misses a year, I don't know. There's so much unknown there. I feel like with Love and Kraft and Golden and all the weapons you have offensively, if you can find a guy, like if you had to find a guy, if Chris Brooks and then you pick up a guy and they split time, if you had to just kind of grease the wheel there as the year went on, I think you could find ways to make that work. So even though we've got Josh Jacobs' legal problems and you've got Marshawn Lloyd injury problems, I'm not sure how high I rank running back on the problem list, even though that is a big part of the LaFleur offense. I think you can find somebody to be fine there. And really, this offense is built on Love and the young wide receivers and Kraft. And if Kraft is back, that is obviously helpful. I would put that a little bit lower on the list. But to me, the number one thing that I'm worried about heading into the year is one man named Jordan Morgan. He has to be at least serviceable, preferably good all year and healthy. What else do we have? Let's talk about Giannis. Our buddy Bill in Menominee Falls said, "Hey, John, I think we're thinking about the Giannis situation all wrong. It might not be that Giannis wants out of Milwaukee, but that the Bucks may want to be done with Giannis. They have very little draft capital, true, and Giannis is very expensive, also true, and Jimmy Haslam has no connection to the city or Giannis and is likely more willing to start fresh or view that as the only way to move forward." We teased this question a bit on the last episode. This has crossed my mind, and as I said on the last episode, I simply just don't want it to be true, that it would be the Bucks behind the scenes that are the ones thinking we have to move on if we want any hope. As we've been over with the Giannis saga, I think, unfortunately, the window is probably closed unless you find some really creative way. I've seen a lot of people speculating if they were to still try to build around Giannis, maybe you go get Trey Murphy from New Orleans, who is a 25-year-old 6'8" wing who scores 20 points a game. He's a tremendous defender. That would be to me, if you got Trey Murphy, that would be very similar, and from the same franchise, that would be very similar to when they got Drew Holiday. They're different kind of players. Holiday's a guard and Murphy's a forward, but they're similar. They're athletic. They're really good defensively. They can knock down shots. So I've seen some Bucks fans say, give up the pick and get Trey Murphy and find a way to bring John Morant in, who has so much off the floor and injury issues. I mean, John Morant's a former, I think, second team or third team All-NBA 2 or 3 years ago, former All-Star. But we know he's a head case kind of behind the scenes, and Is Taylor Jenkins, what is their relationship like? There were rumors that that's a part of the reason that Jenkins was fired in New Orleans or in Memphis, that him and Ja didn't get along. And then maybe after this year, remember we talked about maybe Ja did not like Taylor Jenkins, but after going through this year and winning 25 games and being hurt, maybe he's thinking, well, maybe Taylor Jenkins wasn't so bad. I've seen that thrown out there by Bucks fans saying, all right, trade the pick and get Trey Murphy, and trade this pick and get John Morant. And then your core is Murphy, Morant, and Giannis, and you fill it in with Ryan Rollins and some of the other guys. So maybe there's a path forward there. But is there a chance the Bucks are viewing this as we need to move on as much as this is going to hurt the fan base or the franchise? Maybe we need to move on. Like I've said many times, I think it is highly unlikely that we are going to see another title with or without Giannis. If you move on from Giannis, I don't think they're winning another title anytime soon. They're probably not winning another title anytime soon, unfortunately, with Giannis. And I think I've said this, I would prefer, if we're going to live the next 5 to 7 years without a title in either scenario, I guess I would prefer to have Giannis and to have that once-in-a-lifetime guy on the team, have him be a one-team player, have him be a Hall of Famer, have him set all the records he's going to set for power forwards and maybe get into the top 10 scoring all time. You know, all the milestones he's going to hit in that next 5 to 7 year window. If we're not winning a title either way, I would prefer to be able to have him here and root for him and have him be a one-team guy. Have him be a 17, 18-year Milwaukee Buck, retire a Buck. Maybe you do find a way to rebuild, be more competitive, be a playoff team, win some playoff series. Maybe you come up short, whatever. But I just feel like it's unlikely we win a title either way. And just me, I don't speak for all Bucks fans, but just me, if that's the path we're on, either way, whatever they decide to do here, I would rather Giannis be in Milwaukee than not be in Milwaukee. That said, with what we talked about in the non-teaser teaser, all of the momentum, and I'm talking all of the momentum, even some of the Bucks accounts that I follow that are holding out hope or have been holding out hope that the Bucks can find a way to rebuild around Giannis and maybe get a Trey Murphy like we talked about and do that whole dance. Even those accounts that have been really optimistic, maybe even delusionally optimistic like I am, even those accounts seem resigned at this point that there is going to be a trade in the next week or so, and the Giannis era is over. Miami is still the number one place I've seen talked about in the last 24 hours. Boston has resurfaced as a team maybe in the mix, and Minnesota, that was on Twitter this morning. A lot of people were making note, during the week, I guess, Tyler Hero, who would come back to the Bucks in that trade. I guess he unfollowed the Heat on Instagram. Oh, boy, that means he's gone. And then somebody posted something about the Bucks in a comment section, and his wife liked it. So there's a lot of that stuff going on right now. It does sort of feel like all of the momentum now is on the side of this being over and Giannis playing somewhere else, which is just a bummer in general. But I don't know that I disagree with Bill. I just hope that's not the case. I hope that's not the case, that it is at the end of the day when the full story comes out in a decade or however long it takes. I hope it's not the case that the Bucks, a team that has been historically mismanaged, has almost always made the incorrect move. I mean, we're talking, take the 10 years of Giannis and Drew and Middleton out of it, and after Kareem left in the mid-'70s, and look, they were fine. They were really good in the 80s. They ran into some really good Sixers teams and Celtics teams. I get that. They won divisions, all that stuff. For the most part, outside of the Kareem era and the Giannis era up until now, this has been a mismanaged franchise that makes wrong decisions and just doesn't seem to do the right stuff a lot. So I just hope that franchise is not the one that's saying, we don't want this once-in-a-lifetime player anymore. The greatest player in franchise history, we don't want him. We feel like the only way we can become competitive again is to get capital for him and try to build the roster like that. I just don't want that to be true, although I don't think that it's a non-zero, Bill, I guess I would say. There's a non-0% chance that is why a lot of this is happening. And the Haslam part of it is big. Like we discussed, Wes Edens is still the guy. He is still the chief operator right now, and he is on the governor's seat, and it's not Haslam's yet. But with Haslam now talking about we're going to make this decision before the draft, with Haslam being at the Taylor Jenkins press conference, we talked about that coming out of the Jenkins press conference. It just feels like Haslam is the more forward-facing owner right now, and things are sort of shifting in his direction. And when I think about that, I don't think Bill is wrong that Jimmy Haslam, and this is maybe part of the reason Giannis wants to leave. And we went over that too. It's not home anymore. He loves Milwaukee, he loves the fans, but the front office isn't the home he remembers with the original GM Hammond. I think he's got a good relationship with Horace, but it's not the same family unit it has been. And when you bring in a guy like Haslam, even if he's saying and doing all the right things, I just don't think he has a connection to Giannis, and Giannis does not have a connection to him. And that could be a part of why Giannis wants to leave too. But I think Bill is probably pretty accurate there, that if this does happen, and it does end up being the Bucks that are kind of saying, it's time for us to move on and you to move on, but they're the ones instigating it maybe, I wouldn't be shocked if Jimmy Haslam is a part of that. Jimmy Haslam traded Myles Garrett. He's already traded one superstar this offseason from one of his teams, so maybe he trades two. I think it's a non-zero chance, Bill. And then we wrap up with this. Our buddy Tim in Milwaukee said, you were talking about CC a few shows ago. Do you think Tarik Skubal could be this year's version of CC Sabathia? It could be. That is the biggest rumor. So we're still 7 weeks away from the Major League Baseball trade deadline. At this point, and things can change in baseball, so don't come back at me if they lose their next 10 games, okay? I understand things can change quickly in baseball. It seems like, given the roster makeup and the prospects coming up and Pat Murphy, it feels like this team is going to be a playoff team. It feels like this team is going to be a division title-ish team. And it feels like this team could vie for the 1 or 2 seed in the National League. And all of that same stuff you could say in 2008 as well when they made that trade for CC. When they got CC, you gave up 3 prospects. Only one became anything. Matt Laporta was the number 1 guy in that trade. And I remember at the time people saying, oh my God, what are they going to do without Matt Laporta? Matt Laporta was out of baseball 2 years ago. Lewis Brinson, who was the key guy going back to the Marlins in the Yelly deal, he's playing football right now. So you never know. I think Michael Brantley was the player to be named later in that CC trade. So he was the throw-in at the end of it. He actually had a 10-year career in Cleveland, was a multi-time All-Star. They did end up getting one really good piece out of that. But that was the trade. 3 big prospects at the time for CC, and they got him pre-trade deadline. This would be very similar. At that time, CC Sabathia was the reigning American League Cy Young Award winner. At this time, Tarik Skubal is the 2-time reigning NL Cy Young Award winner. He won it in 24 and 25. He's coming back from an injury. It sounds like he's going to be back, or maybe is back this week or next week. He's missed the last month-ish of games. And he is in the last year of his contract in Detroit, just like CC was back in 2008. So all of that, I understand there are a ton of similarities there, and they mirror each other in a lot of ways. I don't know. The Brewers have the number 1 prospect in baseball in Jesus Madej. Oh, and they signed Luis Lara to a big contract extension. We didn't talk about that. Luis Lara, the number 5 prospect in the system, they gave him a 7-year, $31 million deal this week with 3 club options that could be worth up to $80 million. So it's another guy like Cooper Pratt. They signed to the 8-year, $50 million deal early in the year. Now they've got Lara, 7 years, 31. And those are the number 4 and number 5 prospects in the system, Pratt and Lara. So those guys are kind of off the table, right, if you're paying them. You've got the number 1 prospect in baseball in Jesus Madej. You've got Luis Pena. You've got a bunch of guys that you could use as trade capital. I just don't know. That was such an out of the ordinary move for this franchise for Doug Melvin to make that move in 2008. And he did it, like he said, because he felt like with CC and Ben Sheets, who was healthy at the time and starting the All-Star game at the time, he felt like with those 2 guys and Prince and JJ and Braun and all those guys, all those bats entering their prime, he felt like that was the time to push his chips in, to spend some of that prospect collateral, and to maybe put that team over the top for a World Series. And it didn't work out that way, but they were certainly in the mix that year to make that happen. And injuries were the biggest part that undermined them. Well, they're in the same spot now. I know pitching, when I look at this team's pitching, and even though we had the whole conversation last episode about how I got into it on Twitter with a guy who was talking about how bad the pitching depth is, you do have injuries. It sounds like Woody could be back next week. It's been a month. It doesn't sound like Logan Henderson now is going to be back until maybe early August or late July, when they had originally thought he'd be back at the end of June. So that injury, that back injury, is going to take Logan Henderson down a little bit longer than expected. And, Gasser's been uneven, Sproat's been uneven. So you've got these guys, but how good do you feel outside of Harrison and Mizorowski right now? Initially, a week or 2 ago, I would have said starting pitching is not their biggest problem. And if you're going to spend major prospects, my preference would be to get a big bat. I don't know who that would be. Last year, who was the guy last year where everybody wanted him? And somebody, I think Seattle got him, and then he was bad in the playoffs. I do think if you made me pick one thing that this Brewer team needs more than anything to make them a legit World Series title contender, if you could only spend a handful of top prospects on one thing, would you spend it on Tarik Skubal, or would you spend it on a power bat, a third base power bat? I think I would spend it on a third base power bat. I don't know that type of third baseman is going to be out there. I have not looked at any of that. But if you said to me, John, you've got to spend 2 of your top prospects, 2 top 10 prospects, they're not trading Madej. Even if it's Tarik Skubal, they are not trading the number 1 prospect in baseball for Tarik Skubal. It's not going to happen. So if you made me trade 2 of my top 10 or 2 or 3 of my top 15 prospects, and I could only have one thing, a power-hitting third baseman or Tarik Skubal, I think I take a power-hitting third baseman because the lack of pop in this lineup does concern me when we get to the playoffs and where it's much more difficult to string together 2 or 3 hits to score 1 run. Now, if you're saying we're going to get Tarik Skubal, I'm not going to be sad about it. If you're saying, hey, John, they're going to go get a 2-time reigning Cy Young Award winner to put at the top of the rotation with Kyle Harrison and Jacob Mizorowski, I'm not turning that down. I'm just saying, if you made me pick one thing, and why not both? It's like that little girl in the softer hard shell taco commercial. I forget what that old El Paso. Softer hard shell tacos. Why not both? Why not get Tarik Skubal and a power-hitting third baseman? But if you made me choose where to spend my top prospect collateral, my feeling is this team needs a power bat, a home run hitting bat, a 35, 40 bomb a year kind of guy. I feel like they need that more than they need more pitching, but again, he's a 2-time Cy Young Award winner, so I'd take him. If you're saying that you have to take Tarik Skubal, I'm not turning my nose up and walking away. I'm not leaving the line. But if you made me pick, I think I would take a power-hitting third baseman to complement and throw right in the middle of this order and complement the rest of the lineup with Bowers and Vaughn and Yelly and Terang. If you could throw a guy who can hit 270 with 35 bombs and 100 runs driven in, if you could find that and he's a third baseman and put that in the middle of this order, it just feels like everything else comes together better offensively. And ultimately, what has been the Brewers' problem in the playoffs the last couple of years, it's been hitting. They just can't generate the offense. Tarik Skubal would be nice, though. I wouldn't mind it. I wouldn't hate it. All right, that'll do it for us here on your Friday morning long episode. I kind of thought it would be with the mailbag part of it, but we appreciate the emails. Again, strangebrewpod@AOL.com. When we come back on Monday, we'll recap the Brewer weekend. I feel like next week is the week for Giannis. I feel like if something is going to happen, it's happening next week, in all likelihood. They may wait till the end of the NBA Finals, I guess, which should be over at worst, middle of next week? It feels like next week is it. This is the culmination of, is the Giannis era over, or are we going to continue on with a new reinvention of this roster? We'll talk about that on Monday, too. Have a happy, safe weekend. We'll chat with you then.